this is under the EPA's underground injection control process. And so DEQ is going to be managing the major source and minor source emissions part of that as well. But once we get down to that sequestering it, putting it into the pipeline, that's where you make that separation of those other contaminants versus the carbon. So that's what we're focusing on, is that carbon. DEQ is going to maintain their major minor source, and we're going to be dealing with the injection part.
Yeah, not to cut you off, I'm perfectly aware of the major minor source Clean Air Act, Title V. I work with one, right? RCRA is a waste management, not a pollution program. RCRA is D, which is municipal solid waste, C, which is hazardous, I was underground storage tanks. So it has nothing to do with air emissions.
But those are for class 1 through 3, not for 6.
Okay, I'm done with it.
We can talk.
Last question for the legislators. So, last thing for the legislators here is, I appreciate Senator Reese's bill. So I think there's a little bit of subjectivity in substantial consideration, so I think there's going to have to be some oversight of DNR when we look at substantial consideration. But I'm looking at a letter here, and this is the 2024 Priority Climate Action Plan that was signed by former administration governor. I don't know what I'm supposed to say, to tell you the truth. It was signed in 2023, the plan's dated 2024. And I hear all the talk about from the legislative body that says, hey, we want local government. We want them to do this. And even in this letter, it says, this is the first of the deliverables for an EPA climate pollution reduction grant. Once again, federal funding. But it says right here, as we look toward implementation of this plan, we look forward to working closely with local government, state, and federal partners. In this last legislative session, it's real hard to walk away and think that there's any input from the local government being considered in these processes. And that's not even a year old. And here we are. The first thing they do is take away local government's authority to manage RCRA-D permitted stuff in their parish where they already manage RCRA-D permitted stuff. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to take another question real quick. This young lady right here, what did you just say, brother? This young lady, would you give us your name and where you're from, John?
My name is Mindy Gilbert, and I'm from Grand Lake, Cameron Parish. But the reason I'm here is because Chico Aquifer is a sole source aquifer. So whatever happens to the aquifer up here affects about 14 parishes, including Cameron Parish. It starts in Vernon and goes all the way down to Cameron. Now, talking about the wells, what happened in Decatur, Illinois, and I'm going to say this wrong, Mahomet Aquifer, there were 2 Class 6, at least 1 Class 6 well. There may have been a monitoring well. The first monitoring well deteriorated because of carbonic acid that was leaking and made because of the CO2 that was leaching in there. No one reported that. The second well disintegrated, and somebody didn't want to go to jail, so they reported it. Now, that has been shut down by the EPA. What kind of metal was used in there? Because carbonic acid is going to deteriorate any metal. There's not a well in this world that does not deteriorate and does not leak at some point. All those Class 2 wells in Texas leak at some point. And the CO2 that's used in enhanced oil recovery does not stay in the ground. So you can't compare that to a Class 6 well. So my question is, what kind of metal or is going to be used in the wells to protect our aquifer?
So in Illinois, they did not use chromium 23. That is why that is the standard that we're going with, because we looked at that process and that is very closely and understood that they used a metal that was not rated to withstand carbonic acid.
Okay, so where's the actual data that shows how well this metal will hold up to carbonic acid, because it will leak. It's just a matter of time. So where's the actual data, historical data, that shows that this metal will protect our aquifer?
I can go with you after this and send you some stuff.
So is there actual data, or is it just models on a computer?
Well, you have, so the best example I can give you is, I believe this is 2014, University of Texas Austin did a study on Frio, where they really go deep into carbon capture, try to figure out exactly how much pressure or how much injection an injection site could take, right? And through that process, they did mention the amount of pressure that the casing can take, but then also how it would spread throughout the zone as well. So I can send that to you if you want.
So there's no actual historical data, it's just probabilities.
Yeah, so at the meeting in Montville, we had a subject matter expert on this. His name is Dr. David Schechter. He is the Department Chair of Petroleum Engineering, and he gave a really great presentation on how you can compare EOR to the sequestration we're talking about now, and how you cannot. How are there lessons learned? How are the comparisons inappropriate? And he gave a really great, I've got a slide deck on it, I'm happy to share with you. But
So there's still no historical data, this is all just,
That's not what I said. What I said was my comments. And if we have a petroleum engineer who's spent his whole career on enhanced oil recovery, and he came and gave a 20-minute presentation on exactly what your question is, and I'm happy that we should have him go over it on the to that specific question.
I have another question.
I don't have it in my mind right now, but I can.
Given that the maximum payout of $10 million for a pipeline failure, for any deaths that occur in a pipeline failure, which is $500,000 per person, as an economist, how does that affect the money and personnel allocated to safety inspections and to overall safety protocol in the pipelines?
Look, this is a great question, and if I'm a local community, I am asking specifically, what are the local tax implications of building this infrastructure here? By the way, I don't just ask that with apartment pipelines, I would ask that with all the pipelines that you have. I would ask that with all the industrial facilities. How much property tax are they paying? How much is that going to the local, safety and that kind of thing? So, and Chairman Geymann actually last year worked with the department to pass Act 727, that if we are building a centralized comprehensive energy data system, then part of the piece is pulling that tax information together to provide you.
So the local people have to determine if $500,000 per death, up to $10 million, is worth the risk.
That's not what I said. What I said is that we can assist you in understanding what are the local tax impacts of infrastructure being built in your community. What is the statistical value of life is not something that I'm going to define right now.
Okay, but that's what the law is right now, is a $10 million limit.
I think, is that what it is? That's the law is? The $10 million limit?
I do not.
All right, okay. Thank you very much for your question, sweetheart. Let's get a Beauregard resident real quick. We've got a Vernon and a Cameron. Let's get a Beauregard resident right here, please. State your name and where you live, sir.
I'm Ed Parrott. I live on Geymann Road. Been there for 46 years. And what I want to know is why they want to build one right there by us in our community. Is there other places they could build this? Why there? Is it the soil? And what are they gonna do with this stuff, with the CO2? They gonna inject it right there? They gonna transport it out? What are they gonna do?
Do any of our panelists have any information on the project there?
So yeah, it's a great question, and we met with some of the folks that are doing that project on Geymann Road. We understand how controversial the construction process is on that. It's my understanding, and they're not here tonight to answer. And so I want to be clear, this is my understanding. There's not going to be any storage on Geymann Road. They're going to pipe it somewhere else. And I don't know whether it's going to be Vernon, hypothetically, or Allen, hypothetically, or even Calcasieu, because there are proposed projects in all three of those places.
can also say,
We actually talked about this because I was concerned that they were doing more in my district, of course, with the state kind road, and it's my understanding they want to fight it somewhere else, which presents another problem. I'm not saying that's not an issue, but the story is a whole nother level.
I can also say that we have 2 applications for this parish. Those applications are nowhere near even being to the middle point, right? So it'll be a long time before we actually get to the process of actually reviewing, I would say, getting to the point where we're actually serious about issuing the permit. But knowing that there's significant interest in this area, the first person that's going to know is Mr. Geymann and Mr. Reese, right? So they're going to know when we get to that point where we're ready to let the public know that we're going to move forward with this. But that's not going to be for any time in the near future.
So to follow up on that, since you brought it up, how many proposed projects are there for Beauregard Parish?
2.
All right, and so you said it's going to be a while out. Where are we at on the permit process, if you're allowed to tell us that?
Just technical review. We're going through that permit, we're looking at all the technical information, we're not to a point where we're getting ready to seriously consider them as a project that we're gonna move forward with in terms of issuing permit.
So if
Can you tell us where they are?
in the process, or can you tell us where they're located?
Oh, I mean, location, one of them is actually kind of a tri-parish area, if you will, Beauregard, top corner, and one is closer to Calcasieu a little bit, but not here.
Well, so the next question to follow up on that, how long is this permit process from where we're at today? Like how long before, if everything went perfect for them, how long till their permit would be granted to them?
Perfect world, it would be 18 to 24 months.
From now?
From, if they started today, if we could do this as best as we wanted to, it would be 18 to 24 months. Realistically, right now, we're taking a little bit longer because we've identified that it's a lot of information to get through. These applications are roughly 6,000 pages. And we have people going through them hand by hand, reading every line of them. And if there's any sort of, we call them deficiencies in their math, deficiency in their modeling, deficiency in their construction of their well. If we notice any of that, we send it back to them and say, do it again.
How far along in the process are these 2 permits right now?
Very beginning.
Very beginning.
Very beginning. They've been being administratively complete, but now technical review started. Technical review is a lot.
And there will be, I guess according, Senator Reese talked about a bill that passed this last legislative session. There will be a required public portion to that, right?
Absolutely. There already is, and based on that bill, we are trying to expand the amount of public outreach that we do. Again, putting things on the website, letting the legislators know, having you all come out to a hearing at the Capitol to discuss these issues, specifically if you want to talk about a permit or if you want to talk about the issue as a whole. We're trying to do as much as we can to make sure that we're getting public input. Because again, I said at the beginning, when this first started, I feel like, I don't want to point hands at the previous administration, but once they got primacy, it was, hands off, we're done. But there was a lot of work to be done in communicating with the public on what actually is going to be happening and what the impact is or could be to the community. So we know that we're taking our time now to go back and do work that should have been done, but we believe it's the right thing to do.
And has the thought of mailing out a notice to everybody been
Yes, so
considered?
like I said, yes, that is one of the things that we're doing as well.
Okay.
We're doing certified mail to people in the area.
So to clarify, there are 2 permits out that are touching into Beauregard Parish.
There are 2 applications.
2 applications.
No
No
permit.
permit.
State of Louisiana has not issued a permit to construct a class 5 well.
So we have 2 applications in, 2 applications for Class 6 well in Beauregard Parish. At the beginning of the process, if things went as perfect as they could, it would be about 18 months before we saw that permit granted. And there will be public participation allowed for our community to get in. And by law, they're required to take what that public stuff talks about into account, correct?
Yes. And that is a 30-day, once you get to the draft permit, that is 30 days for public comment with up to 45 days to review. So total about 45 days, but in that process, we're going to be taking that public comment into consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. I haven't hit this side of the room yet. If you'll give me just a second. I want to hit this side of the room. Miss Tina, I see your hand up. Make sure we ask a question so we give our panelists a chance to answer something. I don't want to be the one making them answer, so.
Hello? Oh, okay. Let's see. the Evergreen Sequestration Hub in DeQuincy, is it true that that's not a well? You're just geologically injecting 250 million tons of CO2. That's what's online everywhere. That it is going to increase to 250 million tons, geologically sequestered, not in a well, under the aquifer. Is that true?
Well, it is in a well. So you're drilling a well. You have to drill a well in order to put that carbon into the pressurized zone. And once it gets into that pressurized zone, the pressure at 4,000 feet is going to condense it to a point where, 1 ton roughly looks like that.
So it is in a well? It's not just injected?
Think of an oil and gas well, or a brine well, where you inject brine from an oil and gas process. You're injecting the supercritical carbon into the surface. So you have to drill a well in order to do it. An oil and gas well type of construction.
Okay, that's not what it's saying online anywhere, but it's just saying it's geologically injected.
That's a simplification of the process. Yes, but it is injecting it into a geologic structure or a formation of it.
So to clarify, does that mean that the well is a transportation unit to get it to where it's going?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, you're saying there's only 2 projects in Beauregard Parish?
2 that we have applications for.
Okay, but there's going to be 4. Can we find, right?
I mean, there may be multiple wells with the project, but it's going to be 2 projects.
2 carbon dioxide projects?
Yes.
Okay.
Storage projects.
Carbon dioxide storage? Could you
Yes.
keep saying carbon? There's 2 different things.
Well, no.
It's actually 2 different.
Carbon dioxide, yes.
Okay, carbon dioxide. Where exactly are they? In Evergreen?
So the other one is, yes, BK Burger. Yeah, it's kind of that Allen Road.
When do we find out exactly where the pipelines are going to go?
That is something that we are going to work through with them on the process. I mean, we haven't, for a lot of these projects, they're still working on the process to get all the transportation infrastructure in place, right? So right now, there's only one real carbon dioxide pipeline throughout the state, and that is the Green Line, right? Others have to build pipelines in order to do that. They're going to partner with companies. You see the Williams facility over there. Like Williams is going to be a company that will be doing some of this stuff as well. So they're going to have to build.
Okay, just one more. Will our insurance increase in our community? Our insurance for our home insurance? Because of this?
I don't have an answer for you on that, but I can definitely find out and take information to do that. Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Young fellow right here in the middle. He has been waving me down. He looks like he's in a Pentecostal church, guys. He's been waving me down. Get that man a microphone. Remember, we are trying to be quick and precise, ask questions, and be done. Thank you, sir.
Jesse Waller. Been in Ragley for, I guess this is 15 or 16 years. And I've worked in Sicko for 21 years. I've worked in the petrochemical industry. I'm very familiar with all this, what's going on. I'm also very familiar with the wonderful legal terms that they like to use for stuff. We won't get into that. So I purchased a piece of property 15 years ago for my future permanent location. I work in a refinery. I didn't want to live in a refinery. Spend enough time there as it is. Now it's looking like I'm getting a small miniature refinery right across the street from my house. I'm the closest person that's most affected by this on Geymann Road. So a couple questions. Number one, I like to look at the sky. Is there anything going on with regards to light pollution ordinances? You know, as this facility comes online, they're going to be having lights at nighttime. I don't know how familiar or people like to look at the night sky, I thoroughly enjoy it. That's going to satellites, space station, stars, comets, asteroids, meteorites, all these wonderful things. The aurora. I don't know if everybody got to see the aurora. What was that? A few months back. Amazing! You ain't gonna see that with these lights.
And you forgot the UFOs.
Yeah, I'm not gonna speak on that. So, first off, yeah, so are those ordinances being looked at for number one? Number two, for somebody as such as me, as well as my neighbors, I'm sure feel the exact same way, that this is their homestead. This is their chunk of ground. They worked hard to set up their place, and somebody across the street is proposed to come in and build a plant, which I'm not going to get into it, but everything starts off fresh and bright and shiny and new. But after you get a couple of regime changes, money crunches, things get derelict. We'll just leave it at that. So we know that's the normal way of order of things. We have best intentions. I get that. Most companies do, but the bottom line, it's about money. Your money is paying for this, not their money, your taxpayer money. You can say the government's paying for it. It's not. It's you. You are the government. Now, we have elected officials that represent the government, but it's coming out of your wallets. Every single one of you. This $85 a ton, potentially getting more, that's taken from you. Anyway, so I'm trying not to rant, I'm sorry. Number two, is there any kind of program, because we've seen how the program worked with Sasol down in Mossville, when Sasol expanded and bought all those people out, for somebody such as ourselves that live directly X amount of feet. I'm 30 yards from this facility. Is there any proposed legislation to say, hey, you don't like it that we're coming in here and ruining your neighborhood and building this? We should offer you not what the average market, and I get it. I'm not trying to say my property is better than anybody else's. We are all a community, but everybody's piece of property is special to them. So I had no plans on wanting to leave, but if this gets built across the street, I no longer want to be a taxpayer citizen. I've been in the community for 15 years on a volunteer fire department. In the community, you can't even imagine how much outreach that I've done and helping. I'm the average American dream success story. I started with nothing, I worked my butt off and came and made my life, and now it's looking like all that was for naught. So is there any legislation to protect somebody such as myself that says, hey, okay, if this does get passed, then we have to offer you a buyout, number one. Not that I want to go anywhere. I love where I'm at. I'm in the middle of a project, and I'm looking forward to finish it, but this is a very hindrance on that. Number two, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I can get on answering one question while you're thinking on that one. Hold on. So
Jesse?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, you live on Geymann Road?
Yes, sir. I'm on the corner of Felice and Gaytown.
Right. So I have a lot of friends on Geymann Road, some of them in this crowd, and I won't pick them out.
they said, why do you assume they're your friends?
Yeah, that's right. So, but I wanted to tell you that it's my understanding that the Williams project is a gas separation that is sending gas down to, I believe, Sempra, the LNG. And that's what's going on now. The construction is.
I understand that.
So you're asking about ordinances. I'm not throwing my police or friends under the bus, but I believe that's going to have to come locally as a parish. The state would not, I don't think we would dabble in local ordinances on industrial setbacks and things like that. The CO2 part of that has not happened yet. We don't know where the pipeline's going. We don't know where they're planning on sending it. But I do know in a conversation with them, Senator Reese and I have been meeting and visiting with Williams people as much as we can. And in all fairness, it's been very hard to get information from them.
Absolutely.
We're working on that. And one thing that we have scheduled for the Geymann Road community is a community meeting with Williams at some point in the very near future. They said they did not have enough information currently to really have a good productive meeting. They wanted to wait until the end of August or somewhere in September. So So we hope that we will have a meeting with you and your neighbors very soon to get your questions answered directly from them. Because we don't know what they're planning on lights and all that. And we don't do the ordinances, unless you all want to correct me, we don't do the ordinances for industrial setbacks for that project. That would be a local.
Right, and I get that.
But I do understand your frustration. It's a mess. We've gone out.
Absolutely.
Personally, and met with them. We visited with Sheriff Herford multiple times, Illinois, and we're doing everything we can at the state level, but some of that is really not in our control.
Right.
Well, the next question, is there any legislation that will require them to offer above market value price for their homes if they don't want to stay next to a plant?
To my knowledge, no, and I think that would be incredibly hard to pass. Because then you have airports and you have duplexes and everything else on that would impact. That's my opinion. My colleagues won't.
I get that.
Any other questions?
I think there also needs to be, also in the, abatement part of it, I guess you would call it, noise abatement, lighting abatement, or whatever, that all needs to be.
Yes, I think that's all local ordinances, and we're really
It's a state.
carbon capture as far as.
I got you, and I get that, but the facility that I was referring to is not the pipeline, it is the facility that they're separating, using the amine from, to extract the carbon from the sour gas.
That's why I don't think God said, I do think your leisure hears that. I was recent battle was making them aware that people tend to sleep at night.
I used to.
They thought work on maybe keeping the project quiet at night, and having more of their activity done during the daytime, which eventually we have a lot of pushback from them about that.
Yeah, we've made progress now, for sure.
Push the police jury and say, look, we will create ordinances that will maintain this, and then working with Williams, trying to convince them that they really need to have a different construction schedule, because they don't kind of acquiesce to. But I think in much the same way, as anything else is built on that site, we have to work with the police jury to make sure there's codes and ordinances in place to make sure it's conducive to the people.
Right, and then so, also,
If you get some more here in a little bit, we can always circle back. 1 second, Ms. Kara stuck her hand up a minute ago. I'm going to give Ms. Kara real quick. What you got here? Oh, right here.
Okay, so I'm gathering, I used to work for the State Department, so I understand if you are under certain ramifications, certain guidelines, that you can only speak to certain things and you can't just say anything. And what I'm getting is that you're speaking a lot of politically correct speech, because we have had this community disrupted completely by all the pipelines that are being put in that are supposedly, we've been told that they're the carbon pipelines. But this is what I want to know. Why would these companies put that much money into putting these pipelines in if they didn't have plans of putting carbon through these pipelines anyway? Because it's not so much the wells that I'm worried about. I'm worried about a pipeline leak along the way. And that's where, if I've done my research, I found that a lot of the massive death has come from pipelines breaking and leaking and killing people because they can't breathe and they die on the spot. So I was told that there's no legislation now, and it makes it really easy for them to take old pipelines and turn them into carbon pipelines, because it's a real easy process. They don't have to go through all of the permitting if they just change what they put through the pipeline. And so everybody's sitting back and saying, oh, we're not going to have an injection well. But we are going to have these pipelines that will be carrying the carbon. And I've got it's a staging station right behind my house, our whole subdivision now. It's a big staging station where they are putting together pieces of pipe and I can't think of the name of it, but anyway, they're putting together all the piping, pumping and stuff like that. They're piecing it together and manufacturing it, and then when they get it, they pick it up and they move it to where they're going. They're putting lots and lots of money into this. If it's supposedly just for gas and oil, that's a farce. I mean, we have seen that they're not putting a lot of money into gas and oil, so it has to be because they see the payoff that they can easily just get all this in and then switch it over.
So I think I'm hearing two questions from Ms. Karen, if you don't mind.
Okay.
I think she's asking two questions. She's saying, are they planning this because they secretly have some way of knowing they're going to get it? And are they able to use old pipelines and transfer them over to being used for carbon?
Again, this is what I know about the project on Geymann Road. And the piping that you see now coming from our community, by the way, comes right from our property. So I understand it's a big piece of pipe, it's messy, and there's a lot going on. My understanding is that's a contract with Central, LNG, and that Williams is piping that to them on a 20-year contract. That's my understanding. That's what we see going on now. The separation and the CO2 storage is something that could happen in the future. I've asked for where that route is going to go. I want to know if that CO2 pipeline is also coming through my property. So understand, you and I are on the same page with that question. And that information is not available. But we are trying to get it. We want to know where is that CO2 pipeline going, and then we're going to fight to make sure that they can't make you give the use of your land up through eminent domain. We're going to fight that until my legislative career is over, and I know they feel the same way, because we want you to do it only if you want it. We don't want you to be forced to give up your property for a CO2 pipeline if you don't, because of the risk that could come with it, or you just flat out don't want it. So that's kind of two things going on. The question about reusing the oil pipe, I had asked you all that before, but I would punt to you to give an explanation on how that would be converted, but it's my understanding that it's very difficult. So,
Yes,
But
it is very.
wait, I want to make sure you understand. Why are they putting all this money into this station?
because it's a 20-year contract with Semper LNG to sell the gas to them, and that's what's going on now. That's what I've been told from the industry.
Well, also on top of that, you've got a number of LNG export facilities being built in Cameron. That's their way to get gas from Texas, North Louisiana, on down to Mexico. In terms of using old pipelines, yeah, that is a process that is not very easy to do because one thing, I think it was Jesse who mentioned that things deteriorate. Over time, you can have that with some old pipelines that haven't been in use, or things that have been used for natural gas and petroleum. But also, that is why we're seeing a lot of companies invest in building new pipelines, because it can be hard for a company to say, we're going to turn this off and use it just for carbon dioxide, when we have any kind of permanent issues for carbon dioxide, right? So if they're making money off of that gas pipeline, it's a lot easier for them to go ahead and build a new one than it would be for them to reuse old pipelines that they may have to rebuild.
All right, really quickly, you want to
I just want to suggest you real quick. The world is craving LNG.
I know that.
Last year, the United States signed a long-term, and the reason these pipes are coming, they're coming with burner pairs. Last year, the United States, Germany signed a long-term agreement with the United States last year to sell LNG, and American carbon is not in there. They don't care. There are pockets, of ideological pockets, but I'm not seeing any trade agreements. They want our LNG. That's what they're doing. And I think that's coming too, but I just want to let you know that they want our LNG.
Well, if it stays LNG, that's fine.
I get it. Mr. Petrie, really quickly, remember, very quick, ask the question.
Yeah, I wanted to see if Brett wouldn't elaborate on eminent domain. Is there ever a point where they're not allowed to eminent domain, intrastate versus interstate? Is there a gathering system?
And you're speaking on carbon capture or just in general?
But maybe specifically.
Well, let's talk about the carbon capture pipelines, because I think that's what most of us are worried about. Prior to 2024, I think eminent domain was allowed in both the storage and the pipeline. So they could force all of us into signing a lease for the storage under your house or the pipeline coming through your yard. Currently today, we have removed eminent domain from the storage piece. You have to have, now with Senator Reese's bill, and he can add to that, 85% voluntary participation. And on the pipeline, it has to be considered a common carrier. The Department of Energy and Natural Resources would determine if it's a common carrier, meaning that they're transporting goods or a product from multiple sources for a public benefit on the other end. And we removed some language in law that said that greenhouse gas reduction through CO2 storage was a public benefit, so that if it does go to court, then the court would not have guidance from us saying that we believe it is a public benefit. So we believe we're in a very good position currently to not allow eminent domain on a pipeline for CO2. But I would tell you, I know we have at least 2 people filing bills again in the next session to prohibit it altogether. And we're talking about at least 2 people. So I think this is my prediction, and it's a prediction, okay? It's my opinion that within the next 2 years, eminent domain will not be allowed for a CO2 pipeline. I just believe that's where we're going to end up.
Everybody understands completely, like layman's terms, what he's saying is if there is no eminent domain, you don't have to sign.
Don't sign it if you don't want it. And then they either have to go around you.
Pay your price, or they reroute around.
And just to go follow up on that question, has eminent domain been used or threatened to be used for any CCS projects in Louisiana?
It has been used twice, but it's one company against another company.
Okay.
So it hasn't been used for against a member of the public. It's typically a case where one company goes in and they want to buy a pipeline corridor from another company, and somebody else comes in and undercuts them, and they try to raise the price on them. That's the only time where they've gone to court and a judge has determined that they have the right to eminent domain to the rest of that pipeline because that other company did not own enough of a portion to negotiate.
And let me follow up real quick, if I can, sir. Even though it hasn't been used, it has been threatened. Okay, people in Allen Parish and Vernon Parish have told me landmen came in and bullied them. And I turned it over to the Attorney General's office. Okay, you don't go bother people without means and scare them that they're going to lose their land. That's why Senator Reese did what he did. That's one of the reasons, and I'm thankful he did that. Those people need to behave.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to this side of the room real quick. This young lady's been waving her hand at me for quite a while. This young lady right here with the beautiful blonde hair, the long locks.
Okay. My first question is, with all this carbon sequestration, how much is that going to affect our atmosphere and clean up the climate? Has that been quantified?
Anybody want to take that?
So there are models that I can connect you with that are online. You can go play around with. They look at, okay, what are the different policy levers that one could pull and technology levers, and what would that do to global emissions? Likely, in my opinion, global, and I'm talking greenhouse gas emissions, which carbon dioxide is the largest one, are likely to increase over the next decade. And the reason for that is in the United States, we've actually seen reductions in emissions, but globally we're seeing increases in emissions, especially as the developing world is developing. But if you want a specific, how large could a project be relative to total emissions, certainly I could get that for you. But
I'm wondering, this is a very expensive project, and it is not a current project. This is an ongoing project where they're looking for zero emission carbons. That's what they're looking for. So if carbon dioxide is 0.04% of the atmosphere, and we're doing all of this stuff that is not healthy for our planet, I'm just wondering, I really understood that the reason that they started all of this was because of the polar ice caps melting, the rising sea levels, the really bad weather storms, that was the reason for the sequestration, to alleviate that.
Yes, ma'am. So there are models that they estimate what's called the social cost of carbon. What is the cost to future humans
from emitting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And there are different breakdowns of what these different costs are. But I'm happy, if you want the specific question answered of how large is this relative to the global amount of emissions, that is a specific thing that we can answer, but it is a small share of global emissions.
It doesn't matter about the emissions.
Yes,
What
ma'am.
matters is if the emissions are here to curb the declination of our climate, healthy climate, surely for billions of dollars, surely somebody has quantified how much this is going to do that. And I just want to make a statement here. June study published in Geophysical Research Letter said that the Earth's tilt has deviated 31.5 inches in less than 20 years. It's done that because of punching holes in the Earth for water, mostly, but part of it has to do with mantle convection, and that's where from the Earth's core, the molten rocks come up, then they cool, and then they go down again, which has caused volcanoes and things. So that's things from within the Earth that goes outside the Earth that causes a wobble in the Earth. These minor and regular adjustments relative to the sun affects the amount of solar radiation and insolation that reaches the Earth. And even though the tilt changes by only 1 degree or 2, that's enough to change the angle at which the Earth's energy hits, and that is a major cause of these melting polar ice caps and the rise in the sea level. So that actually would seem to make sense as a reason why we're having these issues. And I'm trying to understand how capturing carbon is going to do something for that.
Since I see you got a notebook and a pen, I'm going to make a recommendation for a book to read. There's a guy named Stephen Koonin, K-O-O-N-I-N. He worked in the Obama administration. At one time in his life, he was a big believer in global climate change and these types of things. He had a revelation, was fired because he spoke of these revelations. He's a PhD, I think he's at New York University. His book is called Unsettled, and it goes into a lot of these questions you're having. Dr. Koonin, and this book is well documented. Tons and tons of sources in it. He estimates in his book that if we start doing this now, and everyone on Earth does it, it'll change the environment in 50 to 100 years. The problem is, we're the only people on the Earth that are doing it. They've done it a little bit in Norway, they played with it in Australia, and really the only people that are doing it here are Illinois, Louisiana, and a few other places. So the answer is it's a long way out, and this is a long, long crapshoot in my estimation. But I would recommend that you look at that book. You would find it fascinating.
Yeah, to Representative Owen's point, if we got rid of all of the combustible engines on the Earth right now, the climate would still be changing based on what they're saying, right? So you can take all the emissions away, and it's not going to make a dent on what we have. I think what a lot of this is really focusing on is, the fact that you have the European Union putting in what they call a carbon border adjustment mechanism. And what that says is, if you're exporting something to them that is high in carbon, they're going to charge you more to bring it into their country. And so a lot of companies that you have here in the United States are not wanting to pay that. And so what they're doing is they're sequestering their carbon, or they're capturing it somehow, so that they can have a cheaper entry into that market. And by doing that, we're cutting out our competitors in Russia and China and things like that. But that is really what is driving a lot of companies who want to do this, is to be able to enter those markets where previously, if they didn't capture that carbon, their product would be costing a lot more.
In a way, though, to me, and I'm just a simple old country girl, in a way that's just like Dorothy when she went to the Emerald City and saw the Wizard of Oz, and they pulled back the curtain, and it was just an ordinary man there. In a way, this seems the same. Because they're wanting somebody that's in the carbon capture game, carbon whatever. That sort of bypassed the whole thing of this being something good for the planet and something that's going to be good for health sustainability.
Thank you very much, darling. All right, we're gonna take a few more public questions. I'm gonna ask you, let's come back to this side of the room. This young man over here, he's waved at me a couple times too. We're gonna try to get to as many questions as possible, I promise, guys. Let's make sure we get to a question quick so our legislators can start responding. Thank you both.
Cody Hanchy, Ragley. So I had a couple of questions. Thank y'all to the representatives coming. It seems like all of you guys are kind of on our side to stop some of the CCS, and then we have Trey and Dr. Upton that are more for CCS, is what it seems like. Is that true?
No, I'm not for or against it. Our job at the department is just to regulate it to make sure we don't have any negative impact to it. I mean, that's our job on anything, right? When it comes to oil and gas, when it comes to brine, when it comes to anything, our job, we're a safety department. We permit activity based on whether it's right or it's wrong. We're not going to play into any side of it. We just look at the science and make sure it's appropriate.
Yeah, and I'm simply here to try to provide information if you want it. That is my only role here. So I'm not promoting any policy or any project.
And I know most of yours have been on economic, but most of your grants have been funded by the oil companies. So it will bias. And can you publish some of yours?
So that's just not true, but I'm happy to touch base with you after.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think y'all did get like a $3 million grant from Shell, and I'm sure they'll let you getting that for the research.
I'm happy to. All of our center's finances are publicly available. I have sent every project we've ever applied for to actually legislators who have requested. We'll send that to you as well. We get funding. Most of our funding over the years has come from the legislature. We were created by the legislature in the early 80s. We do grants and contracts and those kind of things, but the majority of our funding has actually been state.
And Trey, right? Dustin. Yeah. So your boss is Tyler Gray, and so he was just recently appointed by Jeff Landry under SB 244. Is that correct?
He was appointed by the governor back in 2023 after inauguration.
Okay. So with SB 244, y'all are the sole ones that get to choose if a permit passes, correctly?
Well, we were the ones who got primacy from the EPA, so that was always going to be our job.
And are you able to tell us what Tyler, what he believes in CCS?
It's the same thing that I just said. You know, it comes down to making sure we're permitting a safe process. This is something. The activity is not the same as EOR, not the same as traditional oil and gas. Carbon pipelines are not the same as oil and gas pipelines. But our department's sole job is to make sure that we are enforcing regulations. I will say over time, over the past 50 years, the state has had a bit of a problem with enforcing the regulations that we have in the book. That is something that both Secretary Gray and I have come in and identified as our biggest problem. So right now, moving forward with our reorganization, we are creating our own enforcement arm within the agency to make sure that we're holding bad actors accountable. Because bad actors are the ones that really cause the problem for everyone else. It's not necessarily the good companies that come in and spend money in the communities, the ones that pay for school buses, pay for community centers, things like that. It's the companies that come in and generally don't care, right? We want to go after those companies and make sure they're following the regulations that these gentlemen put on the books and these ladies.
Any other questions?
A few more.
All right. There we go. You got it.
So yeah, Trey.
Dustin.
Yeah, Dustin. I'm sorry.
Dustin, yes.
So if they're not able to pass some of this legislation, we just really hope that y'all will help us stop this and not allow these permits, because y'all are our last defense for us, really.
Absolutely. If there is a project that we do not feel comfortable with, or that we feel will endanger the community or harm the drinking water, we will not permit it. If there is a project that we see that is not financially stable enough in order to provide the money to take care of the well if there is an issue, we're not going to permit it. Again, we've had a lot of bad actors in this state that have moved forward and done things in a horrible manner that we are dealing with today. We have 4,600 something orphan wells in this state. That is a remnant of a bad industry that we're trying to correct right now. We don't want to go down that path.
Thank you. Yeah. So I mean, common sense would be there's no way that some of the CO2 will stay in the ground for 1,500 years. So the small economic that would make it, even if it's $1 billion, is not worth it if it's 50, 100 years down the road. chromium 23 fails, or it may not, but it may come up in different areas. So, thank you. And I know HB4 failed, you said in the committee, really bad. Can you provide the people that voted against you and that maybe we can lean on them to get on your side? Because I don't think it was public.
Everything we do down there is public. Sometimes it's hard to find. Sometimes our websites are hostile. Sometimes people don't know where to go look. But every bit of that's public. You can go back and watch the whole 5-hour debate. A lot of people in here were there, came down to testify. And that's fine. Look, that's what democracy's for. People came from across the state to plead, to govern themselves, and they were summarily denied. That's how I look at it. And look, whether it's personal or not, to some I don't know. I've been through a lot of hard debates there. We all have, where we have things that we're real passionate about, and you just don't get through. So it's all public. Look, and I will tell you, we gained an important ally in this. Speaker Pro Tem Mike Johnson is completely on our side. He'll probably carry my bill next year, and I'll be his blocking tight end.
Yeah, and I did email him. I haven't got anything back, but Senator Kennedy was for CCS from what he sent back to me. So I don't know.
So
anyway, he's talking about state representative.
No, I'm talking about State Representative Mike Johnson from Pineville, who's the Speaker Pro Tem in the Louisiana legislature, not Congressman Mike Johnson.
Yeah, and I was talking about Senator U.S.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you very much. Real quick, I've got two gentlemen I need to hit real quick. Dr. Parks, if you'll come see Dr. Parks. Don't you make me throw you out of here, Dr. Parks. I love you, Dr. Parks. If you would please ask your questions, please.
Thank you. Yes, I want to ask, first of all, about the modeling and permitting regarding the kill zone. Is a kill zone required or in the permitting process, and or is the public allowed to see it?
No, not a kill zone, but what we do have is a pressure front versus a plume, which creates your area of review, your AOR. So we're looking at the underground modeling in terms of geology first. Right? So we're not necessarily looking at outside, if that makes sense. Right? We're specifically focusing on the underground portion of it.
Yes, sir, Doctor. Last name again?
Ken is fine. I live off of East Cutoff Road, right near and right.
On my own volition, I asked a defense agency called the Defense Threat Reduction Agency to model what would happen if a pipe burst at the broad location of where we have a Class 5 well in Vernon. And no one's interested in looking at it. I've sent it to the executive branch. It's not that far, but it's far enough where it really worries me. It could go a mile, it could go 2 miles. Above ground toxicity. Now, that happens to be my background. That's why before I was an elected official, I was a military officer, and I happened to work in an area where we modeled toxicity when hazardous buildings got blown up. So I knew who to ask, and they were willing to do it. And I got two plumes, and I'll be glad to pass them out publicly. And they're models.
Yeah.
They're models. But people at DTR were very interested, and they went, "What are you talking about?" And I told them about the thing that had happened in Mississippi, and they took weather into account. We modeled it over 3 or 4 different times of the year, and so it is done. And I will tell you this: that if this continues, if we continue to do this, and that's always a question, I think it should be part of legislation that's part of the permitting process. That those zones are made, they're analyzed, and they're made public, and the citizens around there can see them. I will put that in legislation if this continues to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
Next question,
Dr. Parks, real quick, Ken, and right here on the panel. So real quick, our colleague Kim Coates and Representative Shane Mack and others on our committee worked on language to deal with that, the pipeline. You call it the fuel zone, I call it the risk dispersion model. Like how far would you be at risk if there was a leak, depending on size of the pipe, pressure, and the wind, and all those things that come into play. And Shane Mack, Representative Mack, was unsuccessful in passing his legislation. I know that Representative Carrier got some safety pieces passed, but we have been working on language to make sure that that is part of what we look at so that there are no houses located in that risk dispersion zone. So it is something on our radar. We've been unsuccessful at getting into law, but we are working on it.
Two rep carriers, Bill, one of the things that is required is an emergency response plan. And that is something where each company has to be tabletop exercises with the emergency responders in different communities where the pipeline is located or where their wells are located. So that is something that we would strongly encourage them to continue to do.
Well, Satarsha, Mississippi was not very successful in their emergency plan.
And that's why we require it.
Yeah.
You had other questions you said up front?
One more. It's my understanding that that $85 is received from the companies subsidies for the from this carbon capture, but only about 5% is actually captured. Is this true?
So we had a long presentation on this in Pineville as well. I can send you the slides. The answer is it completely depends on what the source is. And so there's some examples like ammonia production that you're going to get a larger share of the CO2 that's captured. There's other industrial processes, for instance, in refining, that you might only capture some small share of it. So it completely depends on the capture piece of it. And then whatever is captured then goes into pipelines and then is ultimately sequestered. Again, if we were to move forward with this, Dustin's mentioned we have not.
There's really no monitoring.
There's extensive monitoring. It's a very large part of our program. We have to monitor everything. And not only I mentioned that AOR, that has to be updated every 5 years. So not only are we monitoring the capture process, the pipelines, but we're also monitoring what's happening underground through those monitoring wells. We're monitoring water wells in the area as well to make sure there's no contamination of the drinking water. It is a significant amount of monitoring.
Awesome, thank you very much. And I want to also say thank you to the crowd for getting on topic here. We're getting where we're asking questions and letting the panelists answer. We're getting a lot more folks in. I appreciate that. My next gentleman I've selected is right back here in the back. What's your name and where are you from, sir?
My name is, can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
My name is Bruce Mills, and I live off Cookie Jackson Road. My family's been there for since 1973, so they've been around for a little bit. With the carbon capture, I haven't heard anything about open air capture. When I was in the Navy riding submarines, we used to capture carbon all the time with Model F uranium. Didn't require being put in the ground or anything like that. So am I understanding that on Geymann there's not going to be a well, there's just going to be piping? Is that what we're saying?
Is that what we're saying?
That is what we've been told by the people that are doing the project. That is correct.
Okay. So, seals fail. People in Oklahoma that have these type of things also experience tremors on the ground and all kind of things. And also, Williams, it seems to me the pipeline they just put in is made of carbon steel. Would that not be susceptible to carbonic corrosion? Being a boiler inspector and knowing the difference of soot in a boiler and what water does to it, I would say they would eat that carbon steel up pretty good. It may take a little time. We don't know about undetected faults. We can do faults, but we also have a thing called undetected faults that we don't know they're there. That's why they're undetected. Plus, with all the drilling and stuff that's gone on over the years, it could get into those, it could seep out, go right to that pipeline, spill the carbon steel, and we've got a whole other issue that goes on there. Not include the asphyxiation. And for what we're talking about, with China and India and the number of coal-fired plants that they're building every day and all this, it seems to me, and this is just my opinion, that the companies have figured out a way to make $85 per ton over X amount of miles, and then in 20 years, that's going to be a pretty nice penny, and they can walk away and leave $35 million. And does that $35 million go into the general fund, or does it go right into stay with DNR?
So I can tell you, you mentioned the other wells and the faults, right?
Yes.
That is something that through the test well process, that's where we're having these companies identify. Get that geology, that subsurface geology, bring it to our engineers and our geologists, and we certify if that is enough or not, right? And if we deem that that area is not good enough for carbon sequestration, then we say no. If there are orphan wells in that area, that could be potential leak paths. We tell these companies you have to go and replug all of those wells to a carbon standard using that Chrome 23. If they don't want to do that, then they can't get the permit.
Okay, so if they plug it, but what about the casing that's already in the ground that's made of carbon steel?
Pull it out, replug it.
So they're gonna have to pull every pipe casing out.
If they want to do it in that area where there is artificial penetration, they have to re-enter all those wells and plug them back to a CO2 standard.
And who is monitoring that? Or is it left up to the company to say, yep, we did it? Because what I understand from, and I'm not, trust me, I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, no, I get it.
What I'm trying to understand, it says, to me, what I've heard this evening, I know we have somebody responsible for the economists, but we also have somebody that I've heard a lot of. We check the paperwork to make sure the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, to make sure that they've done all the things that we want them to do. But who knows if they're actually doing those things?
We
Who
haven't
goes back and checks them to make sure, it's one of those trust but verify things.
Yeah, we have inspectors at the department that will go out and make sure that these wells are plugged to the CO2 standard. We have people at the department that we can send out and actually put eyes and feet on the ground.
Okay, so
sorry,
is the open air capture not because also with these processes of them doing this for this part, we're talking about decreased efficiencies at the plants, correct? And then we're also talking about a huge water consumption increase that will occur with these type of operations. So, and then how much more are we going to be generating? So what I kind of hear, and this is my opinion, but kind of what I'm hearing this evening is we want to tell Europe that we're close to net neutral, and all these people in here are paying all this money so we can give it to the big companies that want to participate and do this on our dime, because they're getting paid to do this by the federal government. We're paying the federal government. They're making the money, and we're living with the pipelines and the wells. And so we should have some say. We should have some say because these people that are collecting all this money, Chevron, Shell, ExxonMobil, they don't live here. We live here.
So on direct air capture, direct air capture is a thing. It is part of the 45Q. There are a couple of projects in the state that are proposed to do that. They're not very far along as well. We're really specifically focusing on that pipeline to sequestration component of the natural capture process, or the capture equipment that's associated with the facility. And so that's, obviously direct air capture is something that I think is going to be probably a little bit further off from what we're looking at right now. And then also, when you say we want to be showing this year, I think that's not the department's position, right? Our position is purely on safety. It's all we're doing. If there are no companies that issued a permit, we're not going to go out and solicit permits. They come to us, right? So we're not pushing this in any way. We're just making sure that everything that they present to us is factually accurate. And there have been many instances where we've gone back to companies and had them redo their modeling, or redo their emergency response plan, or redo or re-enter wells to make sure that they're at a CO2 standard. So it's a process that's ongoing. It's not a one and done, like a coastal use permit where you come in and say this is what your activity is going to do, and we just give you the permit. This is an iterative process that goes on back and forth for years.
This process, and the companies that are doing it, they're not doing it out of goodness.
When I say process, I mean the permit process.
I got you. But the ones that are actually investing in this magnitude, they're not doing it for the kindness of the heart or the global thing. They're doing it to make money because they have stockholders who they promised a return on investment. And that's where it's being driven. And they know that they can get that money from the government, and so they're being businessmen. They're doing that. When I was coming up in school, which probably was not as long ago as some, more than others.
Spring chicken, spring chicken.
We were taught that CO2 is part of life. It was called the life cycle. trees breathe CO2 and give off oxygen. We were also taught that we were coming out of an ice age. I understand we got global warming or climate, whatever you want to call it. But it only makes sense to me when it comes to the point that you can't come out of an ice age unless it gets a little warmer. And I don't understand how by taxing somebody or taking their land, we can, to this lady's point, stop the earth from changing a tilt. We're not going to change it. Not by taxing people for something that just so we can go to Europe and say, okay, you want to buy some of our goods, and they have this amount of carbon. It's just my opinion. Thank y'all for your time.
Yes, sir.
But to me, this is a big boondoggle.
We appreciate you for asking your questions. This young man has been waiting. He asked me, he said, will you please give me a second to just whine? That's what he said. We'll give you a chance. You ready? All right, they're coming for you. All right. Would you tell us your name and where you live?
Charlie Atherton. I live in Sulphur, Louisiana, and I'm impressed with the education process, because the people in this room are doing their damnedest to educate state legislators and the governor to the facts.
So our people are doing a good job, right?
Yeah, the people are doing a good job.
He's saying give yourself a hand, is what he's saying.
We're educating, the elected officials. And I wanted to commend the young lady across the room that pointed out that this country is going to go bankrupt, and it's not going to make any measurable difference in the atmosphere. Because remember, Japan floated those bombs over. It's not going to make any difference. We're just going to be bankrupt with wastelands and destroying our country. Until China and India and Russia step up, we're stupid to even be having this.
Tell us what you really think.
Yeah.
Tell us what you really think.
Yeah. Well, and I wanted to if you wonder just how big a control that big government has on dictating to the state, what the state's going to do for ExxonMobil and people like that. The gentleman over here in the blue shirt that's talked, and they need to go by that Geymann Road and Troy Pollock's place and see what could happen to them. And I'd like to follow up on the young lady here from Cameron, because what the young lady from Cameron was talking about was really then my question to these guys is why doesn't I want to get the right regulation. Why the state legislatures not following and LDNR is not following EPA Title 14 Section 421 that protects sole source drinking water. And that's the elephant in the room that everybody in here is absolutely terrified about, because the risk assessments that I've seen that's been available clearly demonstrate it's not a matter of if groundwater or sole source aquifers will be contaminated, it's just a matter of when.
So is that the question? Are we in violation of these?
Yeah, I want to know why, Brett, how come your committee doesn't use that to kill this? Because it's a sole source drinking water. The state's not following it. And if you look at the LARF, whatever, it indicates that you're not supposed to do anything to contaminate the strata. So, how come the legislature's not holding LDNR or DEQ accountable for telling you guys, hey, y'all can't do this, just like you guys or ExxonMobil is telling Allen Parish police juries that they can't pass any ordinances, and what you laid out and said everything can be a parish ordinance. Hell no. Local told them we're going to sue you individually, and you either drop it. So they have no control. So my second question to you guys is, when the police jurors were originally